President Biden is in my home state of Wisconsin with me here. He's in Milwaukee, touting Bidenomics. We should be talking about the economic policies, in my opinion, the failed economic policies of this administration, rather than allowing our entire conversation to be gobbled up by legalese. Let the voters speak. Let's actually talk about the issues that Americans are facing right now. And we're facing a lot of significant issues in this country that need to be addressed.
All right. Well, Congressman, since you brought it up, President Biden has just wrapped up his remarks in Milwaukee. He was addressing the Black Chamber of Commerce. You just were talking about Bidenomics and how it failed. I was taking a look at some numbers before the show. According to the latest figures we have from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the unemployment rate in Wisconsin is lower than the national average, 3.2%. According to AAA, the average price of a gallon of gas is $2.76. That's down more than $2 from the high in June of last year. Inflation, as we know, has come down more broadly. So what's wrong with that?
Simply go to any grocery store in the state of Wisconsin with me and let's talk to the customers as they're checking out, recognizing that their grocery bill is up 20% since President Biden took office, and everything they're purchasing is up 17%. Wage growth going into the pandemic was robust, and across the board, people were moving ahead in their lives. Now, as we came out of the pandemic, what we've seen is stagnant or falling wage growth. Is inflation has outpaced wages in many cases. Families can't afford the things that they need. People are frustrated, and it's the economic policies of the Biden administration that has brought us here. Everything from his war on energy on day one, beginning with the killing of the Keystone XL pipeline and continuing on, is the president's policies of paying people not to work after the pandemic, massive multi-trillion-dollar spending bills that drove inflation. And the end result is, if you speak to people here in Wisconsin, regular folks on the street, they're getting clobbered by Bidenomics, and they want to see Washington change course. And I agree with them.
So when you say Washington change course, can we talk about what specific policies? Is this mostly on the tax side of the equation, knowing that this administration also has made a lot of investment into infrastructure with bipartisan support as well, investments in cleaner energy that are, at the end of the day, argued to reduce these inflationary pressures? What is it that needs to be done that isn't being done right now?
A lot of spending decisions are about prioritization. So it's just like your family budget. There's a lot of things you'd like to spend on, but at the end of the day, you come to the table and sit down and identify what your priorities are. Washington continues to fail to do that. And in particular, in the first 2 years of the Biden administration under Democratic one-party control, what we saw was massive spending bills where everything, including the kitchen sink, got into those bills. And that vast amount of new federal government spending in large part drove the inflation that clobbered people on the back end. And when you recognize that family budgets are stretched in large part because of 17% of cumulative inflation since the president came to office, explains a lot of the frustration. But it carries over into other areas. We could look at the median mortgage in the United States of America went from $1,200 a month to $2,400 a month, doubling over the course of the last 3 years. So if you come and speak to a young couple here in Janesville, Wisconsin, who's trying to move into their first home, trying to go from paying the rent to paying a mortgage, it just got a whole heck of a lot harder. And so getting inflation under control to allow the Federal Reserve to bring the interest rates back down is going to have a huge impact. You can't do that if you continue the inflationary policies that we've seen from this administration.
Just on the subject, Congressman, of the Fed bringing interest rates back down, how hard do you think the Fed should be cutting, knowing you're on the Financial Services Committee, and how soon?
Well, ultimately, that's going to be a decision for the Federal Reserve. I'm not going to supplant the Fed in their decision-making process, but as policymakers, we should be working on policies that assist the Fed to bring inflation down. There's a lot Congress could be doing that it hasn't. In particular, as we look at the war on energy and the impact that energy has had on driving inflation higher, we should be working to increase the domestic supply of energy here in the United States. Coming out of the pandemic, this administration was literally paying people not to work. The key there is to get more people into the workforce and assisting them in gaining the skills they need to prepare them for the jobs of the future. If we were focused in Congress on economic growing opportunities that would bring inflation down, it would allow the Federal Reserve to be able to bring that rate down faster.
It's just worth noting, because you've referenced the war on energy a few times here, that we got shale figures out just a few days ago. U.S. production of oil is actually at a record right now. But because you were just talking about the work Congress needs to do, obviously you're now at home. The Senate's heading out of town today. We have wrapped up the year of 2023, and we don't have top-line appropriations figures. We don't have a deal when it comes to border security and Ukraine funding. Congressman, how much are you dreading returning to all the work Congress has to get done in January?
Well, let me go on record in saying I was disappointed that we all left Washington, D.C. We should have kept Congress in place to get that work done. It's far too important to take the break that Congress is doing. That said, when we come back, we have a ton of really important issues. Probably number one on that list is, as you noted, the top line number for appropriations is still not agreed to. That makes me more and more concerned every day as we head towards the next potential lapse in funding in mid-January. And so we got to get our act together. Congress has been abysmal this year working with the president to get things done. I remain probably as frustrated as anybody, and we have some huge topics on the table when we return in the new year.
When we think about those top line appropriations figures, would you be encouraging Speaker Johnson and Republican leadership to stick to what was agreed to in the debt ceiling deal midway through this year? Are those the numbers we should be working with here?
Well, why we're having this difficult debate after we passed the legislation that said, here are the top line numbers, and now we have Senator Chuck Schumer trying to increase that number unilaterally is beyond frustrating. And so the fact that we reached an agreement across the board, bicameral, bipartisan deal to say, here are the top line numbers to actually get spending under control, and then we're allowing Chuck Schumer to hold us all hostage as he tries to rework that negotiated deal and increase total spending, is frustrating. The Appropriations Committee has a ton of work to do between now and our opportunity to pass that legislation on the House floor. I'm concerned we're going to be in a position to either A, kick the can down the road, or a worst case scenario where we would allow government funding to actually lapse.
So there's the shutdown question. There also is the question around supplemental funding, and we have about a minute left, Congressman. How confident are you that a deal can be made on the border? And is the House willing to give the White House a win potentially on border security?
I think the focus is, let's get a win for the American people. The border needs to be secure. We have an opportunity to do that. The House passed comprehensive border security legislation in H.R. 2. The Senate has yet to take it up. I think we have a big opportunity here to leverage potential supplemental funding to actually get the border secure. I'm less concerned about who gets the win, other than making sure the American people win. And the American people win if we truly secure the U.S.-Mexico border.